They have essentially said that this is the only way, this will be the only way to prove you have legal identity. And so if you don't participate in that system as far as the state or the private sector is concerned, you don't exist. So by not participating in that system, you're inherently excluded from the economic system and really essentially everything. It's going to be a problem, reaction, solution type of situation where they've already made the solution. They've already developed what they want to be the new financial governance system after this new Bretton Woods moment. They just need some sort of big event on the scale of World War II or some large event that's, equally disruptive in order to be like, all right, now it's time for a new financial governance system after this big event like they did after World War II.
Mm-hmm. Today we have investigative journalist Whitney Webb warning us that we are witnessing the birth of a new international monetary system, the consequences of which will be disastrous. Whitney warns us this new financial system will replace the current Bretton Woods system and will be built solely on the blockchain. The purpose of the new financial system is total surveillance and censorship over every aspect of our lives. Whitney's warnings are based on the plans of several global elites, such as French President Emmanuel Macron and World Economic Forum founder Klaus Schwab. Schwab has warned the world that every industry from oil and gas to tech must be transformed, stating that we need a great reset of capitalism. In her most recent interview with Mark Goodwin, Whitney warns us that all world governments are pushing us towards this new world order. It is being ushered in by elites such as BlackRock's Larry Fink, who wants to tokenize all existing assets and commodities in the natural world. Whitney warns that everything will be tokenized, from forests to rivers, mountains, and lakes. Everything commoditized to be owned and traded by the super rich and powerful, all with one singular goal in mind: complete control and domination over the rest of us. Within the conversation, Whitney breaks down two important factors of the New World Order plan: digital IDs and natural world tokenization. Whitney warns that Schwab and his fellow elites are on the verge of achieving their grand plans and will use a catastrophic level event on the scale of World War II to usher in the new financial system. As we bring you clips from the video, only a small percentage of my viewers are actually subscribed. If you enjoy finance and investing content, consider subscribing or liking the video. It's free and you can always change your mind. For now, let's jump in with Whitney Webb.
So I think the digital ID is a key enabler of the surveillance, knowing what everyone is doing at the transactional level and being able to tweak that micromanagement based on a person's activity, because the digital ID isn't just limited to the financial system, right? It's like your travel, your health history, your career history, your education credentials, your access to telecommunications, social media, the internet. With the new AI era, right, they can fuse all that data, analyze it, and depending on how they develop that AI algorithm, use it to control people really in unprecedented ways. I think the digital ID and the CBDC and its private sector equivalence project is something that we're always sort of intended to be the same system. So there's documents from the UN, from the BIS, and in related groups that are sort of that have been working on this for years. That essentially frame one as essential to the other, using words about, this is inclusionary, the whole, marketing behind digital ID is that everyone needs a legal ID because otherwise they're unable to access essential services, right? And so the idea is we all have to be included in the system, and they directly link that to the concept of financial inclusion and banking the unbanked, which you brought up earlier. But inherently, these systems actually function in an exclusionary way, based on how they've been set up. They have essentially said that this is the only way, this will be the only way to prove you have legal identity. And so if you don't participate in that system as far as the state or the private sector is concerned, you don't exist. So by not participating in that system, you're inherently excluded from the economic system and really essentially everything. So you have to onboard to the surveillance state or be excluded from everything. So it's, being marketed as inclusion, but it's really inherently exclusionary.
Totally. So how does this system get triggered? How do we move into the Mark Carney-ism?
Well, I think they sort of give it away when they say that this is the new Bretton Woods movement that needs to be seized. So Bretton Woods was what came out of World War II, essentially, and was the creation of a new financial governance system after World War II. And this is essentially an effort to create a new financial governance system that was announced well before any sort of crisis like that, but it's probably going to need a crisis of that level to be implemented and to convince people to onboard at scale. And if you subscribe to the theory that all wars are bankers' wars, which there is plenty of evidence to support that, I would say, that seems to suggest that perhaps, this is the it's going to be a problem, reaction, solution type of situation where they've already made the solution. They've already developed what they want to be the new financial governance system after this new Bretton Woods moment. They just need some sort of big event on the scale of World War II or some large event that's, equally disruptive in order to be like, all right, now it's time for a new financial governance system after this big event like they did after World War II.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the thing that's so interesting about this debt bubble exploding is that when you know that the debt bubble is going to explode and you want to explode it into the new system, the way that you sort of trigger that into the system that you want to get the masses to go with you is you actually want to have the most debt obligations on the record, on the board, so that when the system pops, they'll all pop. When the debt bubble pops, every debt bubble will pop. It will be everything all at once. It won't just be like, oh, Japan's fine, the US is it won't work like that. Everything will pop at once. So in this weird way, you actually want to create as much debt as possible right before the pin bursts the bubble. And then you can offer this, hey, we'll service your debt 1-to-1 if you come join this new universal tokenized ledger. Just sign up here, do a selfie of your face and give us your biometrics. And then here you are.
Well, it seems like in Larry Fink's case in particular, there's a goal, a big ambition there to develop new asset classes that can be used to basically fuel their existing business model and perpetuate it for millennia forward. Mm-hmm. So one of these that I've been writing about for a few years is the whole idea of natural assets. What they call nature's economy. And one of the groups that has been sort of propelling this forward, at least one of the earlier groups, the Intrinsic Exchange Group, which is a product of the Rockefeller Foundation and the multilateral development banking system, has a graphic on their website called The Opportunity. And they show there the existing amount of assets in the world economy and then show what if we unlock natural assets, how nature's economy, it's like 6 times the amount of existing assets in the economy today. And so as an asset manager, BlackRock being able to unlock and take control of as many natural assets as possible that aren't currently part of the financial system is obviously a way for them to perpetuate what they do and deepen and expand their control over not just people in the existing financial system, but really over the natural world as well, and essentially turn everything alive into a tradable Wall Street financial product. And the goal, as Fink has stated, is to have all of this on a universal ledger, on blockchain, presumably, and have it be, trackable and surveillable, which is interesting if you look at it through the context of risk management, which is something that Larry Fink is very open as having been one of the guiding lights of his whole career. And so by having it all surveillable and automated in a sense, he's able to have his risk management AI thing, Aladdin, sort of exercise control over it in unprecedented ways, I think. For their benefit. And then, of course, a lot of what's happening now as we're moving into this new financial governance system is the push to change all of the infrastructure towards this, quote unquote, green model, I guess, or decarbonization, right? Which is, of course, interface with the global carbon market, but not necessarily so. It doesn't have to be. But the push is obviously to create a bunch of new infrastructure all over the world. And BlackRock is positioning themselves to be one of the key players in that space. They acquired, I think they're called GIP, one of the biggest infrastructure, developers in the world. And I think one of their top guys at Davos just a few months ago was talking about how they're betting really big on infrastructure going forward. And it's going to be one of the biggest investment opportunities of the next several decades, actually. So I think they're quite ambitious. And, if people aren't aware of this, I'm sure they'll get away with it, but we'll see. One of the things, too, about the natural asset thing, at least as far as the natural asset corporation model is concerned, is that you literally just go into a forest or you go to a river or lake and you identify the natural asset. And then at no cost to you, just after identifying it, you issue shares in the natural asset, a lake, a forest, whatever, and then you sell those shares to the sovereign wealth funds, asset managers, whatever, and then you have an IPO and generate all this money. I mean, it's literally just pointing out something outside and being like, this is mine, I'm going to fractionalize it and sell it to people, and you're producing money in like, out of thin air, essentially. And you're able to do that. I mean, the natural world is vast and huge, and they're doing this, they're financializing it all as framing it as the only way to save the planet. But really, it's the only way for them to save their insane debt racket.
Right. And it's funny, too, because, I think there's a parallel here that you've talked a lot about where it's like, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain playing with the blockchains and who's validating the blockchains. Howie Lutnick of Cantor, specifically said, hey, if you want something seized, Tether's great, you just call Tether. Ethereum's great, you just call Joe Lubin. You call the guy behind the decentralized theater to blacklist the person or do whatever. Mm-hmm. Reminds me kind of a little bit of how the AI play is probably going to go, right? It's like, oh, it's AI that's in charge. It's AI that's in control of all these things. But really, it's the keepers of the AI.
Totally. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you have to pay attention to the people that are tweaking the AI, programming its objective functions that maintain it. They're able to manipulate it, and there is definitely a coordinated push to put AI in charge of as much of everything really as possible, and allows them to sort of follow what I call the Wizard of Oz model, be the man behind the curtain, but have AI be sort of this layer between you and the public that gives you sort of allows you to never be accountable for anything. You can just either blame everything on the AI or say like AI is superior to human intelligence and therefore, it's not our fault and we should trust what it says. Computer says yes, computer says no. And, I think it's very likely that AI following that same model is going to have a very big role in this coming, digital financial system. Yeah. Well, I think the selling point that we're going to be seeing soon are these same guys saying this is the free market solution to climate change. Right. Let's let the free market resolve the environmental issues that we're facing. And this is the way to do it. I think it's probably going to be cloaked under those metrics because obviously framing it in sort of a left-leaning way has been unsuccessful and generated a lot of pushback, to the point where you have big groups like BlackRock and Vanguard, abandoning some big climate groups that they were a part of. You have Larry Fink openly backing away from the term ESG after being sort of the ESG champion guy and going on record saying that a lot of this stuff that BlackRock's been involved in that's been framed as ESG isn't about politics or ideology. It's about the prospect of long-term returns and profit. So I think, him moving in that rhetorical direction is sort of a harbinger of what we're likely to see going forward, because they want the big players in financial markets to sign on, and they don't want to see it as like a state-led thing. They want to see it as a private sector-led thing to get them to onboard, and also to sort of, I think, neuter a lot of the criticism from right-leaning people and the populist right in general.
The guys with guns.
Yeah, well, in the States, yeah,
sure.
The majority of gun owners, right? They want to sort of placate them, and I think they're also going to offer it to people as, oh, if you buy into these systems, you'll, be prosperous. This is, a return to sovereignty and prosperity, and they're going to use some of these technologies, where people have heard the terms but aren't necessarily overly familiar with them, and sort of market it as being, a return to financial sovereignty and prosperity and stuff, but not necessarily. I think it's, again, it's going to be the same debt-based monetary system. Debt is a form of control. Right. But they're going to try and market it, I think, under those metrics. So, Fink recently said that he views Bitcoin specifically as a technology for asset storage. And in this multipolar currency paradigm, it's likely there's going to be, in multipolar reserve assets, they want to move away from the appearance, at least, that the U.S. dominates the reserve assets of the world. Do you think Bitcoin has a place in that? And do you think it's possible for the U.S. government to sort of Wizard of Oz that, to sort of be able to manipulate countries, through that potentially?
100%. Yeah. I mean, we talked earlier about how, Bitcoin basically is digital M0. It's this digital base layer money, digital base money. And all of these other dollar denominated things and Ethereums and all these whatevers are debt based. Larry Fink specifically talks about, it's technology for storing assets. It's this universal ledger of the state that, we can shove any integers into, any bits, and use it to uphold the state of all sorts of other assets. The U.S., I think, has the most to gain from Bitcoin, actually. It's sort of this weird, it's been framed, so much so the opposite. But the U.S. has so much Bitcoin. The United States has 1 million plus Bitcoin. We're seeing companies like MicroStrategy, basically doing a speculative attack against the U.S. dollar while their headquarters is 15 minutes away from the CIA at Langley. They have 200,000 Bitcoin. The ETFs, with Grayscale and with the new BlackRock and Fidelity ETFs, there's like almost 600,000 Bitcoin now within the United States. There's a huge push within the United States, within the borders of the United States, to acquire as much Bitcoin as possible. I think the U.S. has way more to gain as we've crossed this 33 trillion, 34 trillion. We're at this runaway debt service. Where do we print money and retain our economic hegemon? We can actually inflate the dollar into Bitcoin, this demand inelastic asset, and uphold the economic hegemon of the dollar, using Bitcoin basically as this digital M0 to offset. And now we're seeing Basel III laws coming into the play with capital requirements, where if you want to hold $100 million of Bitcoin, you need to hold $100 million of dollars on the books as consumer protection. What that actually means is if that $100 million turns into $10 trillion of Bitcoin because of an insane price explosion, now you need to hold $10 trillion. So they've created this tethering, no pun intended, but also probably pun intended, of the dollar system to Bitcoin. They want to control where this debt bubble pops. And now they have the perfect vacuum to suck up the dollar debt.
So, within Bitcoin circles, it's been framed for a long time as the answer to fiat, to the debt-based monetary system. But what you're saying is that the powers that be in the U.S. are poised to use it to perpetuate us into the new era of the debt-based monetary system.
Yes, I am, for sure. We have to make sure Bitcoin doesn't just become an asset that's paperized and you trade it with shares on BlackRock's iShares IBIT ticker. And instead, we really focus on making it a currency that can be utilized by everyone in the world, and that billions of people can hold, Bitcoin in a self-sovereign, self-custodial way. And it doesn't just become the settlement network for central banks around the world.
Right on.
And that brings us to the end of today's video. Whitney Webb has laid out a sobering vision of a new international monetary system built on blockchain, with the aim of total surveillance and censorship. The warnings of global elites like Emmanuel Macron and Klaus Schwab about the need for a great reset of capitalism are a stark reminder of the transformative changes on the horizon. Whitney's insights into the push for digital IDs and the tokenization of the natural world highlight the profound impact these plans could have on every aspect of our lives. The commoditization of everything, from forests to rivers, and the quest for complete control by the super-rich and powerful, paint a concerning picture of our future. As Whitney Webb emphasizes, these grand plans are on the verge of becoming reality, potentially ushered in by a catastrophic event on the scale of World War II. It's crucial to stay informed and vigilant about these developments. Thank you for watching. If you found this video insightful, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video. Your support helps us bring more critical content to you. Don't forget to turn on post notifications so you never miss an update. I'll see you all in the next video, and all the best.